You wake to the hiss of dying fire. The hall that once rang with laughter and music is a carcass of stone, ribs of timber jutting upward like broken bones, bleeding sparks into gray morning sky. The air clings to your throat with ash, each breath acrid with the sweet sick rot of burned flesh. Smoke settles on your tongue until you gag and swallow the taste of ruin. Around you lie bodies twisted in shapes that parody prayer, mouths gaping, eyes glazed, fingers curled around nothing, some still blackened where rings fuse to skin. But it is not the stillness of corpses that chills you most, it is the movement beyond them. Heavy boots scraping stone, shadows dragging chains like iron serpents, searching for the living among the dead. Once you were untouchable. Silk whispered with your every step, servants bowed, and your name bent rooms into silence. Now those silks hang in tatters, ash-streaked rags clinging to a trembling body, mockeries of rank. You clutch torn fabric not to hide but to remember warmth that no longer exists. Their eyes do not look, they claim. The gaze is a smith's tool, shaping humiliation into something visible. Goblets that once gleamed with wine lie overturned, rims blackened, gold spooning into soot. Tapestries unravel as fire devours them, threads splitting like veins across stone. Every emblem of your lineage burns beside timber, each symbol collapsing into ruin. Humiliation seeps into your marrow, heavier than any chain they rattle, for the invaders do not merely destroy, they dismantle the very idea of who you were. You are not allowed to grieve. Grief is a soft, slow language, a luxury burned before the pyre cooled. You are herded with others, shoulders pressed, knees buckling, faces lowered. Laughter rises around you, low, coarse, a thing that grinds like stone. Their mirth is not at victory over men but at the spectacle of fallen gentility. They feast upon the unraveling of dignity and name it triumph. Each cruel sound is a stitch pulled from the fabric of your life. You feel your name unbind from the mouth of history with each forced step. Memories stab like splinters. Incense once curled in the halls where you were named. Your father's boots beat a steady rhythm across polished slabs. Courtiers hushed and tilted faces toward you as though light fell from your presence. You remember hearts that kept winter at bay and songs that braided names into future mouths. Those intimacies now seem obscene, private treasures displayed to hungry strangers. The embers of those lives whisper that nothing sacred survives fire. Not your halls, not your honor, not your body, not even your name. And then the truth settles like soot. The nightmare is not only the burning, it is surviving the ruin. Survival becomes a ledger where your breathing body serves as proof of conquest. To live is to be evidence, a witness they own without writing your testimony. Tomorrow presses like a blade at your throat, inevitable and close. The future offers no mercy, only accounts to be balanced by the conquered. You taste metal at the back of your mouth, the tang of fear counted as coin. Each step forward is a tally toward some unknown market where names are traded and histories are bartered. You stare at the doorway where light once fell warm. It now frames men whose laughter drips like oil. They prod you like a harvest, choosing what to keep, what to display, what to break. The idea of home compresses into an unbearable point inside your chest. Still, memory resists in small rebellions. A whispered name in a cradle, a hidden stitch in a servant's hem, a lullaby hummed under breath. These acts are fragile as ash, but they hold a thread of self. You cling to them because to let go would be to let invaders write the last line of your story. Survival becomes a dusk of quiet defiance, secret and private, surviving by not being fully seen. Chains rattle again. The sound drags you like undertow toward longships and open water, toward a life repurposed under foreign roofs. You are pulled forward not by hope but by the force of what remains. A body that remembers how to bear children, a tongue that holds old names, blood that will be twisted into someone else's tale. Step by step you are drawn into the narrow mouth of that future. The night lengthens, folding its dark into days to come. The creak of the longship gnaws through the marrow of your bones, steady and relentless, like the coffin lid of the world shutting upon you. Each groan of timber is a death knell, each splash of or an iron hammer driving you farther from the ashes of your home. Salt spray lashes your face in merciless bursts, stinging eyes already swollen, lips split and bleeding, but no ocean water can wash away the bruises blooming purple across your skin, nor can it scour the terror swelling inside your throat until it feels like a stone lodged beneath your breath. You sit shackled in the hollow belly of the vessel, rope biting deep into wrists rubbed raw, each wave pulling tighter against your flesh, as though the sea itself conspires to fasten your captivity. Every movement reminds you that your body is no longer yours, that even your pain has been bartered into their spoils, a grotesque trophy of conquest. The stench is unbearable, a suffocating brew of sweat, blood, unwashed flesh, rancid ale, and rotting sea brine. It clings to your lungs, seeps into the pores of your skin, turning breath into a punishment. Around you, men grunt, chew, spit, and laugh, their voices coarse as iron dragged over stone. They feast on salt-cured meat torn with yellowed teeth, glancing at you with eyes that measure flesh as they would livestock, weighing what is strong enough to breed, what is delicate enough to display. Once you were adorned in jeweled brooches, silken veils, and woven crowns. Now your hair hangs in snarled mats stiff with ash and salt, a grotesque parody of majesty. They do not see your name or your lineage. They see plunder that breathes, a prize to be claimed, a body to be bent into their stories. The horizon stretches eternal, gray and pitiless. You stare across it, desperate for land, for a glimpse of a village or even a jagged rock to promise escape. But there is nothing. Only the endless heaving sea, its rhythm a mocking chant, reminding you that every stroke of the oars pulls you deeper into exile. Behind you lies ruin, before you lies erasure. The water is a prison without walls, an infinite expanse that cages without chains, sealing every direction except forward into the unknown. The humiliation of conquest is no longer a wound, it has calcified into dread. You begin to sense that this voyage is not a journey but a sentence, not passage but transformation. The ropes carving into your skin are threads binding you into a tapestry not of your weaving. They stitch you into a future where your body will be renamed, your voice silenced, your identity twisted into proof of someone else's power. What you endure now is not the brutality of a night's raid but the forging of a life in which survival is reshaped into servitude. You feel yourself dissolving into a role not chosen. A wife against will, a servant against dignity, a vessel against memory. Every breath confirms it. Survival is no gift. It is the slow carving away of the self, the steady grinding down until only the shell remains. Yet even in this nightmare, memory flickers like dying embers. You recall warm halls where incense curled into vaulted ceilings, feasts where voices rose in harmony, your father's hand heavy on your shoulder as names were recited, binding you to a lineage older than the stones beneath your feet. Those memories now feel obscene, too fragile to survive the stench of chains, too sacred to exist beneath the gaze of men who laugh at your brokenness. Still, you clutch them in silence because to let them go is to let them write the last line of your story. The longship shudders forward, chains rattling like bells tolling for your old life. Around you, the sea moans its endless hymn, and you understand at last. Captivity is not a moment, it is a horizon. Ahead lies no freedom, only assimilation into households that thrive on domination, where your body will be both evidence of their victory and the altar upon which your name is extinguished. The creak of the vessel deepens and you feel the nightmare shift shape, pulling you toward nights where silence will be demanded, where laughter will sound like knives, where survival itself becomes the cruelest punishment of all. The hall is not a sanctuary but a stage. You are dragged into its center as torches hiss, their flames painting grotesque shadows on stone. Warriors sit in a circle, their bellies swollen with meat, their mouths sticky with mead, their laughter booming against the rafters like drums of war. Yet the true battlefield has shifted, no longer the clash of steel but the spectacle of your body. You are not a woman here. You are a prize, an emblem of power, an object passed between calloused hands until your name dissolves into the jeers of men. The ritual is not clothed in vows or sanctified in blessings. It is a ceremony of possession, stripped bare of honor, a proclamation that conquest is incomplete until it is pressed into your flesh. The bed becomes an altar, a grotesque inversion of sacred union. Once, veils and silks crowned you with dignity. Now they lie shredded beneath, rags that soak up the humiliation poured upon you. The conqueror leans heavy, his breath a rancid fog of ale and triumph, his hands carving bruises where jewels once rested. Around you the witnesses do not turn away, they watch, they cheer, they drink. The act is not private, it is a spectacle, a theater of ownership where each thrust declares victory not only over land but over lineage. You feel your body reduced to parchment upon which the story of conquest is written in pain. In the stillness afterward, you understand the cruelty is not confined to this night. It stretches forward into endless tomorrows. Children will rise from this silence, children who bear the conqueror's eyes and your despair. They will be both heirs and reminders, bridges and wounds. Their voices will stumble over the language forbidden to them. Their laughter will echo with the blood that chained you. Each child will be a monument to the collapse of memory, proof that your bloodline has been absorbed, repurposed, conquered from within. The war will live on in their veins, repeating itself with every heartbeat. Identity fractures here. You feel the collapse not only in body but in spirit. Your name, once spoken with reverence, becomes a ghost, unspoken, unsafe, unsung. Your tongue hesitates at familiar words, choking them back before they betray you. Even silence is corrupted, once a space of thought, now a shroud that conceals endurance. The conqueror demands more than obedience. He demands the erasure of self. To survive is to surrender pieces of who you are, until even your reflection feels like a stranger wearing your skin. You begin to grasp the philosophy hidden in horror. Conquest is never satisfied with blood spilled on soil. True victory requires corruption of blood itself, rewriting the future so thoroughly that the past cannot return. Memory becomes dangerous, lineage becomes a battlefield, and the womb becomes territory occupied without end. Every noble woman claimed is not only one life broken but an entire history redirected, a genealogy bent beneath the weight of domination. Where once you carried heritage, now you carry proof of someone else's triumph. And yet, within this grotesque theater, small rebellions flicker like dying embers. A lullaby whispered in secret, a forgotten word muttered to a child, a hidden stitch woven into cloth. These fragments of resistance are fragile, nearly invisible, yet they remind you that even conquered blood remembers how to ache. But you know the conquerors are patient and their victory is slow. They are not merely taking bodies, they are colonizing futures, ensuring that tomorrow speaks their names while yours fades into dust. The nightmare has shifted inside you. The battlefield is no longer distant. It beats within your chest, thrums in your veins, lives in the children you will bear. You are not only captive, you are transformed into living evidence, into soil that yields for another's seed, into history itself rewritten against your will. And as torches gutter low, as drunken voices rise in hollow celebration, you realize the conquest has only just begun. The days stretch thin, unraveling into a silence that tastes like ash. You rise not with the dawn but with the command of voices that are not your own. To endure is not to live. It is to carve yourself into a mask, to let flesh become a costume stitched with submission. You learn the tilt of the head that avoids the lash, the stillness of hands when rage trembles beneath the skin, the weight of silence where once your voice ruled halls. Each gesture is theater, each nod a performance. When you smile, it is not kindness. It is a blade turned inward, slicing memory, severing you from the person you were. Their tongue slips into your mouth, their syllables choking your own language until you cannot tell if the betrayal lies in speaking or in silence. Survival is a grotesque stage and you play a role you never chose. Chains no longer rattle, yet you feel them all the same. They have melted into shadows, into the weight of eyes always upon you. Every hall that once rang with prayer now vibrates with coarse laughter, each echo hammering into your skull like nails. The conqueror's lounge where your ancestors once held council, their mirth heavy, filling the air with meat-stained bravado. You pass through these spaces as if invisible, yet every glance drags across your skin like a whip. The walls remember who you were, but the eyes see only what you have become. Compliant, bent, diminished. Even silence betrays you, for it is no longer a refuge but a prison. To hold your tongue is to survive, but each word unsaid rots inside you, a graveyard of songs, prayers, and names. Yet beneath obedience, rebellion smolders. At night, when torches gutter and warriors sink into drunken slumber, women gather in shadows. Their whispers are fragile as moth wings, yet they carry the weight of kingdoms. Songs rise in secret, trembling hymns to lands now ash. Lullabies cradle forbidden names, hiding memory inside the mouths of children who will never walk ancestral soil. Needles slip through cloth not only to stitch garments but to weave defiance. Secret symbols embroidered into hems, invisible to captors, radiant to those who remember. Fingers trace prayers into ashes, carve marks into hidden wood, scatter fragments of identity like seeds in barren earth. Each act is small, nearly invisible, yet vast in meaning. It is resistance disguised as ritual, rebellion masquerading as routine. You live in duality, one face for survival, one soul for truth. Above, you are quiet, obedient, bent beneath their will. Beneath, you are flame, weak, flickering, but alive. This dual life stretches you thin, tearing you across a chasm of self-betrayal. Every bow feels like surrender. Every whisper risks annihilation. Dread blooms in the tension, in the certainty that one day the mask will slip, that one day the shadow will betray you to the light. You are a ghost moving through two worlds, never whole in either, always at war within. The cruelty of endurance sharpens. You breathe, you walk, you speak, yet with every act you hollow further. The mask you wear grows heavier until you cannot tell if it is still performance or if it has fused to your skin. You wonder if survival has already stripped you of self, if rebellion flickering beneath is only illusion. To endure is to fracture, to exist as echo rather than presence. And you know, as nights stretch longer and masks harden, that this grotesque theater cannot last. The stage is collapsing, and with it so are you. You drift through the longhouses like a shadow, yet even shadows possess more substance than the hollowed vessel you have become. Once your name carried weight, a sound that made halls bow in recognition. But now the syllables are smothered, replaced by crude nicknames uttered in a tongue not your own. The burnished iron where you glimpse your reflection does not show you a woman but an outline blurred, a figure whose features dissolve each time the torchlight flickers. You are still here, breathing, walking, eating, but each act feels like mockery, as if life itself has become a performance designed to deny you the dignity of existing. The noble woman is no longer celebrated. She is no longer even despised. She becomes a ghost, drifting from corner to corner, carrying platters, sewing torn garments, soothing infants who cry in a language alien to her blood. The men do not see her. The women avert their eyes, for in her they recognize the abyss that waits for all who fall beneath conquest. She is a warning more than a presence, a living reminder that nothing is safe, that lineage and heritage can be turned to dust in the span of a single raid. Names are erased from chronicles. The halls that once recorded triumphs now echo with feasts celebrating her captors. She cannot even write her despair, for ink and parchment belong to the conquerors, and even memory begins to rot when it has no place to rest. The bloodline she once cherished, noble fathers, proud mothers, long history sung by bards, are now merged into another lineage, absorbed until they vanish. Her children no longer bear her crest. They carry the mark of those who conquered her. She looks into their eyes and sees neither betrayal nor loyalty, only the indifferent inheritance of conquest. Memories distort into legend. She recalls gardens of her youth, marble steps gleaming in morning light, yet when she whispers these recollections, the young ones laugh, treating them as fables. Her lullabies become curses disguised as song, each note a quiet attempt to smuggle the past into the present. Yet even these fragments are stolen. Children grow, they forget, they learn the tongue of their father's captors, and the words of their mothers curdle into sounds that mean nothing. The grotesque imagery is not carved into flesh but into the mind. Women wander halls where their own children no longer recognize their lineage, where their touch carries no authority, where their faces are merely familiar shapes without history. The cradle becomes the coffin of memory, each birth another burial of what once was. The very act of survival feels treacherous, for living demands erasure, and erasure is the slowest kind of death. Hopelessness is the air they breathe. To persist is to diminish. To wake each morning is to accept another layer of forgetting. There is no rebellion here, not even the whisper of songs. There is only endurance, and endurance devours meaning. A woman who was once a beacon of lineage is now reduced to silence. Her spirit dissolved into the fabric of another household, her existence tolerated but not honored. Even survival has become erasure. She knows she will not be remembered as she was. The chronicles will not mark her name. The feasts will not toast her memory. Even her blood, mingled and diluted, will carry her forward only as absence. And so she drifts, half forgotten already, awaiting the moment when even her ghost can no longer be seen. If the women are ghosts here, the nightmare is still not complete. The next phase does not release them into death's mercy. It traps them in something worse, a living death where the body remains but the soul is extinguished, where existence itself becomes a prison with no walls to break. The nightmare reaches suffocation. The hall is not silent, yet the noise does not resemble life. It resembles the groan of a tomb kept open, demanding its prisoners to breathe. You sit among them, the other women who once ruled courts, who once commanded servants, who once bore names sung by poets. Now you are relics, preserved not out of reverence but out of necessity, bodies maintained because they are useful, vessels for lineage, containers for dominance. Your soul has long since been extinguished, yet your body is forced to move, to kneel, to obey. Every day is a grotesque ritual of humiliation. At dawn you serve, your hands red from labor unfit for the blood you once carried. At noon you endure, a smile demanded, a silence required, a nod expected whenever their laughter fills the rafters. At night you are reduced further, stripped of privacy, stripped of dignity, stripped of even the right to despise. Your body is never yours. It belongs to no world, not the one conquered, not the one that conquered you. You are foreign everywhere, a possession in both directions belonging to none. The sensory weight is unbearable. Heart smoke clogs your lungs until breathing feels like drowning in ash. Children tug at your skirts, children born of conquest, their eyes mirroring the faces of men who claimed you. They do not know you as a mother of heritage, only as the woman who exists to tend, to hush, to obey. Their laughter is innocence, yet when it mingles with the roaring amusement of warriors, it turns to chains rattling inside your skull. You live inside echoes, echoes of a home lost, echoes of a name denied, echoes of voices that claim you but never truly see you. Hopelessness is not sudden, it is cyclical. Each humiliation folds into the next, each day indistinguishable from the last, until time itself becomes another form of captivity. You do not remember seasons. You remember only the repetition, the same smoke, the same commands, the same hollow rituals. The collapse is total. There is no air left to breathe. Even dreams betray you, for in them you return to halls that no longer exist, to gardens long trampled, to voices long silenced. Awakening is worse than the dream, for the nightmare has no boundary. It is your waking life, and it does not end. And here the philosophy sharpens like a blade across the throat. Conquest is not simply about lands or crowns or gold. It is about existence itself, about taking the very marrow of identity and carving it into new shapes, grotesque and unrecognizable. They do not merely rule the earth beneath your feet. They rule your breath, your memory, your flesh. They make you live as if you were already dead, turning you into a monument of their triumph, an effigy of their permanence. You are not allowed to vanish, for vanishing would be freedom. You are forced to endure, for endurance itself is the victory of your conquerors. You feel the weight of this truth pressing on your chest like stone. You are not remembered as you were. You are not permitted to disappear. You are made to exist in the space between, neither alive with dignity nor dead with peace. A living relic, preserved for their story, erased from your own. And so the nightmare closes its fist. No air remains, no escape is possible, and yet the breath continues, drawn in ragged, unwilling gasps. The collapse is complete, and the audience is left with nothing but suffocation. From here, the abyss prepares to still itself. Section 7 will not show the violence, but the scars, the aftermath carved deep into memory, the silence after the screaming, the darkness that does not fade even when the fire dies. The swords have dulled, the ships have rotted, but the silence remains. You wander through this silence as though through a graveyard without tombstones, where every shadow is a memory no one dares to name. The battles have ended, the fire has cooled, the laughter of conquerors has faded into the soil, yet still the weight persists. Not in the clang of steel or the roar of raids, but in the absence of voices that once commanded halls, in the vanished songs of noble women who became nothing more than whispers and broken sagas. You stand before the ruins and the stones do not speak. They have absorbed too much grief to give it back. The walls that once sheltered pride are now husks for moss and wind, but the silence that presses against them is heavier than any storm. For here, in these abandoned spaces, the truth is not shouted, not carved into monuments, not preserved in gilded texts. The truth is erasure itself. These women remain as fragments, a name half spoken in a saga, a child born with eyes that no one dares to trace back, a bone uncovered in soil yet unmarked by memory. The grotesque horror has shifted. It is no longer the roar of violence, but the absence of remembrance. What is worse, to burn in the fire and be carried into legend, or to survive only to be erased, forgotten, denied? Death in flame is a tragedy. Survival without voice is annihilation stretched across generations. You taste it like dust in your mouth, the bitterness of stories that should have been told but were smothered into silence. And you realize that the conquest never ended with swords. It was perfected with forgetting. The reflection becomes unbearable. The noble women, once the breath of dynasties, are now only shadows cast by the chronicles of their captors. Their faces are blurred, their songs unwritten, their pain translated into myth that glorifies those who destroyed them. They are phantoms trapped in the margins, erased until their silence becomes the very proof of domination. History is not written by victors. It is written by silence, carved into the void left behind when the conquered are denied their voice. You feel that silence pressing into your chest, more suffocating than any chain. And yet, despite the erasure, fragments survive. In lullabies that still carry forbidden cadences. In ruins where women once walked, their footsteps lingering like ghostly imprints. In bloodlines that still breathe, though they may not know whose grief flows within them. These fragments resist, not as loud defiance, but as quiet, stubborn survival. They are reminders that even silence cannot completely extinguish truth. It only buries it, waiting for ears willing to listen. You, standing here centuries later, are forced to listen. The silence is not empty. It is full, swollen with grief, heavy with untold screams, dense with the weight of lives denied. You do not see their faces, yet you feel their absence, and the absence itself becomes a wound. The nightmare has slowed, but its echo lingers. It forces you to ask, what is conquest if not the power to erase? What is memory if not a battlefield where silence is sharper than any blade? The realization claws at you. Their tragedy is not only theirs. It belongs to all who forget, all who accept silence as history, all who allow voices to vanish into dust without demanding they be heard again. You feel implicated, drawn into the crime of forgetting, forced to acknowledge that the horror did not die with them. It lives in the quiet, in the gaps, in the stories that should have been told but never were. And so the reflection becomes a scar, carved deep, one you cannot close. You will carry it because forgetting is no longer possible. The silence has spoken. From here the final descent begins. Section 8 will close the circle, not with redemption but with a cold moral truth, a whisper so heavy it will follow you long after the voice has fallen silent. You stand before a nameless grave, the soil damp and cold, the inscription long since devoured by time. The stone is cracked, half swallowed by moss, a monument to forgetting. No garlands remain, no offerings, no voices to speak the name that once clung to this earth. The silence here is not emptiness. It is the silence of erasure, the deliberate quiet carved into centuries. You feel it pressing on your skin like frost, a chill that seeps into bone. The noble women's fate was sealed not by death alone, but by the forgetting of their suffering. Their lives ended twice, once when the flesh surrendered and again when memory surrendered too. The wind howls through the ruins, but the sound carries no stories. Fields rise green over skeletal remains, harvests blooming where agony was once spilled. The land remembers in its roots, but the chronicles do not. Their pain is consumed by centuries of indifference. Laughter once cruel now faded into echoes no ear can trace. You search the soil for answers, but the soil only gives bones. Bones without names, bones without histories, bones that belong to voices silenced too thoroughly to be resurrected. They lie beneath your feet like questions never asked, like truths deliberately buried. The horror here is quiet, restrained, not the scream of conquest but the whisper of its aftermath. And perhaps that is worse, for screams demand witnesses, but whispers can fade, swallowed by wind, until there is nothing left at all. You imagine them in life, once wrapped in silk, once adorned in jewels, once seated at long tables where their laughter carried weight. And you imagine their undoing, stripped, bound, silenced, folded into the victories of others. You see how their names were rewritten, their children taught to forget, their bloodlines reshaped into branches of dynasties that denied them. Their survival was not salvation but slow obliteration, a gradual grinding away of identity until only fragments clung to memory's edge. And now, centuries later, you stand at the edge of that obliteration, forced to confront its consequence. The true conquest was never the land or the crowns or the gold. The true conquest was memory. To erase a people not only from the earth but from the telling of Earth's story, that is power beyond swords, beyond fire, beyond ships. That is the conquest you feel now in your chest, a hollowness that no voice can fill. The reflection lingers heavy. What is worse, to die in fire, remembered in screams that echo forever, or to live and endure, only to be erased so completely that even your suffering dissolves into myth? History does not carry their voices. History carries only silence, and silence is heavier than ash. You feel it suffocating you now, as though standing in the ruins has placed a hand over your mouth, demanding you join in the forgetting. But forgetting is the crime. Forgetting is the conquest perfected. And in this moment you recognize that remembrance, fragile, partial, incomplete, is all that can resist the void. The grave may be nameless, but it is not empty. The soil may be cold, but it holds truth. The silence may be heavy, but it is not absolute. For you hear it now, faint but undeniable. A whisper beneath the centuries, a warning carried through time. You step back from the grave and the whisper follows you. It is not redemption, not peace, but a wound reopened, a scar made visible. You cannot give them back their names. You cannot rewrite their stories. But you can no longer claim you did not hear them. Their silence has become your burden. And so the story ends as it must, with no triumph, no release, only the unrelenting weight of memory's absence. The nightmare has closed, yet it lingers, not on the screen, not in the ruins, but in you. The cold truth settles like ash. The greatest conquest was never of land or of kings, but of memory itself.